You don't know what you don't know. Huh? Have you thought about that phrase before moving abroad? So what do you do with that? How can you ensure you don't miss something? I'm Kalie with Expats Everywhere, and I've lived in 5 countries and helped thousands of people alleviate this fear. Now, while I can't solve everything for you in this video, I'm going to at least give you 5 crucial items to tackle before you move. The first has to do with your banking. Now you might say,
I've been using banks my whole life. This is an easy one.
Wrong. Do you know how much your bank will allow you to transfer online without having to walk into the branch? Not that branch. Because when you're abroad and you want to, let's say, buy a house or put money into travel, it's not easy to just walk into your bank. I knew someone who was trying to buy a house and their bank would not release their funds without their physical presence. So that meant he had to fly back to the US to get his own money. So what can you do to make sure this doesn't happen to you? First, have a conversation with your bank. Find out what they do and don't allow and how easy it is to access your own money. Have a relationship with your banker, not that kind of relationship. So you have someone you can talk to and not always get an automated response. Some banks are more internationally friendly while others are a nightmare. I've gotten rid of Wells Fargo and Bank of America for this reason. Going with a bank like Chase might make more sense for you, but the important thing is to do this well in advance before you move. Don't try to make this change a month out. You'll need to make sure your personal info is up to date and all of the settings are right. For example, make sure you're getting as much electronically as possible. Also be aware of resources out there who can help you. When Josh and I bought a house in Portugal, we needed to move money over for a down payment. For one, we wanted to do this in a timely manner, and for two, we wanted to time it to make sure we would get a good exchange rate. While virtual banks like Wise and Revolut are good for this, we found the company Spartan FX the route we wanted to go because we could communicate with an actual person. So sort out your money to make sure you can access it, but start this one well in advance. Make sure you can get those codes you need while abroad, which leads me to my next thing, your phone. In today's world, you can't live without it. Remember when we didn't have smartphones? What did we do? Oh yeah. You'll want to be able to access those 2-step authentication codes for financials like banks, credit cards, and passive income access. Give me my money! So how do you do that? It could be porting your number or using a website like Tossable Digits, but you also have the option of an app like Google Authenticator or AirKey. You need to decide if you really need to keep your number. I know, some of you have been like, I've had my number for 50 years. Wait a second. What year did cell phones come out anyway? Oh, okay. Anyway, let your number go. Nowadays, there are so many apps for communication. Think about WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, iMessage, Skype, and the list goes on and on. No idea what I'm talking about? It's time to explore your app store. Again, this is something to play around with well before you leave. Figure out how these apps work and get your parents and your grandparents set up on them so they only have to press a button to call you. How do I know they can adapt? My grandpa's 98 and still has a landline and a flip phone. So my cousin bought him a tablet, downloaded the app, gave him 3 steps on how to call us. He's called before. Now when he does, I'm like, Grandpa's calling? But he knows how. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's likely that your current provider like Verizon or T-Mobile will be way too expensive once you move, so it's time to move on to greener pastures. And while we're talking about greener pastures, let's talk about your mail. I actually don't think those two have anything in common, but it's not easy to transition to the topic of mail. Not that mail. This mail. Oh, not easy, but necessary. So here we are talking about your mail. Like I said before, change as much to electronic access as possible. It's not great to have a family member or friend get your mail because it's not like it's their actual job, so it might not be something that they want to do. Even if it is their job though, are you paying them? Most likely not. So let's just make this easy on everyone and get a virtual mailbox. Like I've said with the last 2 points, this needs to be done far in advance so you can test it out. If you choose to do this the last week before you go, how do you know how reliable the company is? How do you know if they communicate? Are you really going to have tax documents sent to someone you don't know anything about? So set up a virtual mailbox with a company like Royal Post and send yourself mail to test them. You can have anything from getting mail scanned to you to having them forward on a new credit card or something like that. The earlier you set this up, the happier you will be because you'll be getting a plan you want, which means you're saving money and going with a company that is reliable because you can practice with them before you go. Now, let's talk about those documents you need to get in order. That's an easier segue. That one actually works. So now we're talking about updating documents and getting paper documents you want to bring with you. When's the last time you got your health records? You know, in Portugal, when you register to get your public healthcare number and meet with your GP, they actually ask you about those records. It was pretty funny asking my mom if she had my childhood vaccination proof. I'm sure she has it somewhere. You know, she put it in a safe place, aka black hole in her house. So before you leave, collect those records. Do you have a trust or a will that needs updating? Is your tax info updated? Keep in mind you want to update these and have copies of these. If you're retiring and starting to draw off your pension, talk to your financial advisor about documents. If you're moving with kids, have their school records. Everyone is different with what you might need. Just think about, I need records of important things. Not those records. Those will be a pain to move with. There are shops for those still around though. Seriously, you can find them. Okay, last one, which is also an easy one to transition to. It's your driver's license and car related stuff. If you're planning on getting a license abroad, then you need to figure out what that entails. For example, in Portugal, you need an apostilled copy of your driving record. See, I told you this was gonna be an easy transition. Records, huh? So here's the thing. It's much easier if you do this before you go, unlike what I did, which was have to have a family member help me out. It's not always great to bug your family members about this. Just do it beforehand, it's much easier. Thanks, Mary Lou. Now, when Josh and I moved abroad for the first time, he sold his car to a friend. Well, technically he loaned it. The plan was we could use it when we came back. In hindsight, he should have just sold the car to him and changed the title over. But he didn't. Cue the dramatic music. A couple years later, we found out that this friend was driving late at night and crashed the car into a grocery store sign. I'm not making this up. So he ran into the sign, nobody was around, he panicked, ditched the car, fled the scene. Now remember I said this was a loan, so guess whose name was on the title? Now thankfully this didn't come back to bite us in the butt, but the smarter move would have been to properly document the change and just be done with it. So that's why I sit here with you today with all of this wisdom. So think about your car stuff. What are you cutting ties with? Make sure it's done the right way. Maybe you want to ship your car. It's time to price compare and see if it's worth the money and the logistics. Just be prepared for bureaucracy when it comes to changing over your driver's license. So if you need more advice, I'm happy to jump on a call with you, so check the link in the description to book that. And if you want to know more about these topics and other things to set up before you move, check out this podcast I did with Dallas to get another perspective and other interesting stories. Now, let's get moving.